So good morning, everybody. We have another episode of Environmental Social Justice with my friend Laura Fitton. She is with Pistachio, but her current company is Enough.co. Now, Laura has a pretty long background in environmental, big advocate as a kid, but then you went into public relations and communications. So tell us about that background and how you kind of strayed from the environment, but then came running back.
Yeah, it's really kind of weird. I'm literally one of the people Greta meant when she said, you adults knew and you did nothing. In high school, I was an activist. I organized a march on the state capitol. I got involved with the Student Environmental Action Coalition. It's off camera, but I have a poster from their very first event, Threshold. I stayed with them through college, got a degree in environmental science and public policy, and studied environmental science writing with Carl Sagan. So I had all the privilege in the world, all the opportunity in the world. And what did I do? I ran away to sea after college and ended up in tech, in startups, in marketing and public speaking.
But important segues. Communication is so important with the environmental world. A lot of people don't understand that. Sorry to
That's the thread through the whole thing, is trying to take complicated things and explain them in a more direct, simple way so they're more actionable, which is 100% what we need in climate right now.
Yes. A lot of people don't get that.
About 14 years ago, the reason pistachio is in my name, it's weird, I get it, I'm a nut. About 14 years ago, I got excessively excited about Twitter and all the opportunity I saw in it. And so I set out to evangelize what Twitter really could be, what it would mean to business, to media, to politics. And I had a lucky hunch, right? I was right. And that works out well. But so my Twitter handle, Pistachio, took on its whole own identity. I ended up writing Twitter for Dummies. I did a Twitter-related startup on 40 and sold that to a software company and worked there for 8 years so I could focus on my kids. And after leaving that whole cycle and learning, politics is great. My degree is a policy degree. Activism is great. I did a lot of it. It's near and dear to my heart. I still, just went on a George Floyd march this month. But things that scale quickly are startups and tech and business. And whatever you feel about capitalism, we need climate solutions to scale very, very quickly. And we need a new kind of capitalism, which is why I love you putting justice right at the center of this. I did some research on environmental racism in college that I was actually able to publish that's just horrific and tragic, how badly we pollute in areas where people with less privilege are. So It's kind of all coming together now. And the story I'm trying to tell with Enough.co is the story of the climate economy. I think people don't yet understand. They still think of climate as this expensive thing we have to, pay to fix. And the reality is the climate is going to impact all sectors of the economy. All the ways that you earn, that you spend, that you save, and if you're lucky enough that you invest, are going to be impacted by climate, both negatively and positively. So there are chances to actually make money fixing it, which, again, whatever your feelings on capitalism, scaling up solutions faster is the thing we absolutely need at the core. But even more importantly, to the more, kind of business-minded, not really thinking about the environment folks out there, your business model is going to be impacted. I don't care what business you're in. And you need to be figuring that out now before you lose market cap, before your industry goes under the way coal is going under, before you go from 500 billion to 140 billion like Exxon, right? Now is the time to be planning ahead. You didn't have a COVID plan a year ago, I'm guessing, and I'm guessing you have a COVID strategy now. You need a climate strategy now if you don't have one. So that's the story. It's very simple.
And what people don't, so I love the fact you're talking about businesses need to plan now. So one of the things you and I have talked about in the past is if you are transporting something, that is going to change how you transport. Certain ports are not going to be available. Certain rivers are going to be just choked with sediment or just no longer travel. You can no longer travel through it. Where you grow materials or where you gather materials will change because the climate is changing and something won't grow in a certain climate and you have to change that. So this affects every single kind of economy and especially energy. Most gas companies, oil and petroleum companies, have adjusted to the fact that they can no longer do what they're doing in the past, and they are all focusing on green technology, green energy. Did it come a little late?
They are.
Pardon me?
They say they are, but they're still starting new projects, trying to get loans for new projects, trying to take more out of the earth when we know it can't come out.
Exactly. And they are, I mean, there is whole divisions dedicated towards green energy. They're a little slow. It's a little bit on the late side. So they're playing catch up because I think they finally realize that's happening. But the reality being is we have all of this electric energy starting, green hydrogen starting. I won't talk about pink energy because I'm on the fence about that for people who don't know what that means. It means nuclear. So that's actually becoming very in vogue. And I just honestly don't know what to think about that one. You probably know more about it than I do. But talking to corporations and CEOs and executives, boards, you need to adapt.
Yeah.
Change is happening whether you like it or not.
Markets don't like unpriced risk.
Yes.
Once they're aware of unpriced risk, they don't like it. It hurts valuations. So everybody investing in public and private markets right now is investing in bullshit data, right? Because companies are not disclosing their climate risks yet.
No.
There are many competing standards on how to measure them and how to disclose them. Since they're not universal and they're not required, we're all just going like, la, 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 we don't see them. But it's already hitting in crazy ways. I mean, everyone already knows like, oh, okay, yeah, there's been more hurricane damage. There's been more wildfire damage. There have been more heat deaths, which is horrific. More people just simply dying in the world because it's too hot where they are. Insurance is easy to grasp. But what about construction? The price of wood due to climate and this one bug in Canada has gone through the roof in the last 2-3 years. It didn't help that everybody's doing these, home pandemic projects right now, and demand shot up, and our logistical supply chain is so backlogged. So shipping is slowing things down and making prices go up. But that was a very steady price that affected a lot of industries for like 20 years. And now it's shot through the roof. So you might think, oh, we're talking 2050, we're talking 2030. My company might have to spend a little extra, decades from now. Do not bet on that. Business models are being disrupted left, right, and center. And, it's just not smart. It's not responsible. Be a red-blooded capitalist, bless you, but it's not responsible capitalism to not be incorporating this now.
I love the fact you brought up insurance and construction, because that's my background, is environmental insurance in the construction industry. So yeah, those have been pretty steady, and insurance is getting walloped because people are saying, why doesn't, and I actually taught a class on this called Insurance 101 for Climate Activists, because everyone kept saying, why doesn't insurance cover climate change? And I'm thinking, well, what do you want us to cover? That's a very nebulous statement. I mean, is it fire? Is it flood? Is it storm surge? Is it hurricane? I mean, all these storms are getting worse. You're well aware of this. When I went to Boston University in the 90s, there was a grad student who wrote a paper about how climate change, at the time global warming, was affecting storms and making storms worse. And we heard about it. We read it. Oh, it's cool.
We knew.
We're like, okay, that's interesting. But we didn't pay attention to it. And now, as you said, those of us who kind of knew, kind of were aware, moved on with life, and then we realized, wow, we should have been a little louder.
We knew, but no one believed it. It was a very Cassandra kind of a situation. The whole situation in 1990 in Rio, there was a UN summit. Things were discussed, goals were set. It was looking good, but all these vested interests came in with so much disinformation, so much outright lying, manipulation, and managed to really frame so much of the conversation about climate in terms of political costs, political risks, and political expenditures to prevent it. They made it look very expensive to stop.
Yes.
The reality is the cost to stop it is absolutely dwarfed by the cost of the destruction it's bringing. And I think it was Swiss Re that came out with some pretty incredible numbers on this in the last month or two. I don't have the
forefront. Yeah, no, Swiss Re's been on the forefront. They've written them, Swiss Re and Munich Re have both done quite a bit, including they wrote a policy to cover a coral reef in Mexico.
Wow.
When I first heard about that, we're going on 2 years ago, maybe 3 now. I thought, who the hell would write a policy protecting coral from hurricanes? Brilliant, because they use parametric measures, hurricane strength. You got X amount of dollars if your coral reef got hit. Because why does that matter? That entire economy is based on tourism, and if you lose that beach, which is protected by the coral, you have an economy.
Absolutely.
That right there.
And I mean, part of me is relieved the insurance industry is being hit first with the losses because they're so well positioned to make changes. Even if you can get a loan for your new coal plant, good luck getting insurance to operate it and to get it going, right? So the insurance company has a lot of leverage over parts of the economy. But the reality is right now we have so much money moving in the entire global economy. I don't care if you are spending food stamps or if you are investing a sovereign wealth fund of, massive billions of dollars, whatever. You have choices that can move the money away from climate risk and towards climate opportunity. And not all of them are more expensive, right? Buying more vegetables instead of more meat, that's actually cheaper. Buying more grains and less dairy, again, cheaper. Buying from local farmers depends on your area and whether you're in a food desert and your situation, but there can be ways for that to be cheaper. And then all the way up to the way money is still being invested in these things that are going to be stranded assets, and the way massive dollars are being put into things that have undisclosed climate risk. That money's in danger. Yes. That is defying your core fiduciary responsibility. And if we can break those bottlenecks, break those log jams, and start moving that capital towards the solutions and technology we already have and scaling those up, we can get a lot done a lot faster. And that's really our only hope. We need all hands on deck. We need every dollar on deck. And whoever you are watching this, whatever job you have, your job is already a climate job.
Yes.
When I talk about the climate economy, it's not just, which products do you buy? It's definitely not, let's just make some products that are more expensive and market them only to environmentalists. So it is how you spend, but it's how everyone spends. But it's also how you earn. You have power at work. Companies are complaining about having a hard time hiring people. Well, the companies that are on top of this trend and being responsible corporate citizens have a lot easier time getting engaged, motivated talent to do productive work, because everyone's a little anxious and restless about this at this point. I'd rather see you give your engineers a great opportunity to do something meaningful while they're at your company than for you to lose them to climate startups. Exactly. This is everybody.
You hit the nail on the head with hiring people. So, people in my generation, we were often made fun of, tree huggers or environmentalists, and, you're just soft and squishy. And it's interesting how that's now changing. We actually recognize a problem. I think it's Gen Z is really focused on the environment. Yes. Millennials are. They actually want to make a change in the world, not just a paycheck, which is fantastic because we kind of deviated from what is important in life. Money's great, but if you destroy the planet in the pursuit of that, we have nowhere else to go. Yeah. And what I love that you do, and we're going to tell people how to find you, is the communication. You make it simple, and that's the hardest part. You and I have been doing this for a while.
Right.
Communicating the simplicity and not overwhelming people with how dare you and shame on you and you're a horrible person. Yeah. You're okay. We're going to figure it out and we're going to fix it.
Yeah. And there's stuff we can all do. I have a page on enough.co that I actually think is our handiest page so far. And it's called Climate Jobs because it's for the dreamers who are thinking, I got to throw it all away and go get a climate job. And the entire top half of the page sort of tells them, maybe you don't. Here are 41 things that your company could start doing. And by the way, while some of those things involve a cost, many of those 41 things are going to save the company money. Yes. Many aren't going to cost at all. They're lateral moves, right? I went to try, as I got started on my journey in this in October 2019, diving back into climate after being along for, let's not talk about how many years. I said, oh, great, I want to divest my 401k. It's small, but it's something I can do. And I looked back at the big software company I used to work for that's very progressive values and, thousands of employees. There was not one single fund choice in our 401k portfolio that I could choose that would get me out of oil. So I had to run all 50 or 60 choices through fossilfreefunds.org, figure out which funds were kind of the least bad and divest that way, right? But that's just flipping a switch. That's just picking up the phone and calling Fidelity and saying, we need to add 2 ESG funds to our 401k portfolio. That isn't
quite
cost
well.
any money.
Yeah.
So there's a ton of things like that. I encourage everybody to look at the list. Some of them are fun, like let's start composting at work. Obviously, one of them happened in a big way in the last 14 months for, of course, tragic reasons, but more working from home, more remote, less air travel, less commuting.
Yes.
But every company can do something. It should, because it's in the interest of your business model.
I am always amazed by a lot of the environmental friendly firms that are actively fighting working from home because management wants people in office, in-house, so I can look at you. And I get it. Some people need oversight and management. Hopefully, you can trust your employees to get the job done. But when you're promoting the environment and they say, oh, we'll give you a bus pass. That I also get. Living in LA, not the easiest thing in the world. We don't have the best transportation. So when someone says, oh, take, the commuter route, I've done it repeatedly. I've lived right on a bus route, so I have done it. And it's not great. I'll be honest. Right. It's not great. I would much rather 100% work from home, maybe once a week go in. So how do you communicate that to someone who's maybe dug their heels in the ground and said, I'm not budging?
Well, I think you need to look at, the cost savings for one thing. I think you need to look at values and productivity. I think there's this legacy assumption that you have to look at people to keep them productive. But I think in the last year, a lot of companies have discovered that wasn't actually quite true.
Very true.
And it opens up to a much more inclusive workforce, right? So you can reach people who maybe don't live in your wealthy zip code and they can become productive employees. You can reach people who maybe have a really hard time with accessibility and getting physically to your office, or are dealing with long-term health issues that make a commute undoable. There's a lot of really valuable talent out there. There's talent in other nations. There's, as people are thinking about investing in climate, I really encourage them to think very, very broadly about the folks in the crosshairs of climate, the folks in low-lying nations, poorer nations. Remember the whole necessity is the mother of invention?
Yes.
I want investors to look for entrepreneurs on the ground where climate impacts are worst and figure out how they're solving. Because, man, they are a lot more motivated if they're facing it every day to come up with creative solutions. We need to get that capital distributed more equitably to the people who are already trying to get us out of this and have the greatest incentive to do so.
That's fantastic. That's really good advice. And one thing I love that you said, I'm going to go back a little bit, talent. So many, I used to live in New York, and it was always like that was the hub of all the talent. And that's where they hired, and that's where the headquarters of companies were. But then I moved to LA, and people were like, well, you have to move back to New York if you want to be in this position. I thought, but I don't want to live in New York again. I did it. It's hard. It's cold. I like LA. And so I was like, oh, that's fine. I don't need to do it. But now that everyone's doing remote, companies are now realizing, okay, we need to find this specific person, this talent pool, and it may not be in your immediate area. And now you can look across the country or across the globe. You can have somebody in Germany working on your account, and it works out, and they may be the best person for the job. So that is the one huge benefit that I hope people take away from this remote working thing, is you can get talent anywhere. And on this,
oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, and it goes triply. Like I said, I spent years and years working on events for that company that I sold my startup to. And it was shocking how inequitable an event can be, a physical in-person event. In that when we had people coming in from Latin America, we were well aware that while our ticket cost, I don't know, like $1,000 to $2,000 for the event ticket. The real cost to them was much more equivalent to about $20,000 in their local currency. So
Oh,
what
right.
it took for a human business person in Latin America to travel all the way to Boston to participate in what was an incredible event cost them so much relative to their, income, their revenue, their business model. It was just wild to think that people were making the effort. Think how many more people can participate in these incredible gatherings
Oh, yes.
when the price of admission is logging onto Zoom. I mean, we
Yep.
even had 1 year I was doing a blog about the event, and I traced down, what countries were people coming from. We had 2 people coming all the way from the Central African Republic, which is one of the poorest nations on earth. So again, the relative spend to make that trip worth it for their business was great that they could come, but think how many business people in CAR were excluded. So I really hope these hybrid and remote models keep happening for not just work, but collaboration and bringing together the brightest, most motivated minds who want to help on climate, because the solutions are not just in the few cities you're used to investing in.
Yeah, and that's the social justice aspect right there. You hit it on the head. So how can people find you and your specialties, not just finance? We all know you're a specialist in finance, but how can you help people?
I generally am brought in to speak to employees, right? So I can do like lunch and learns, virtual events. I can sit down with management and kind of brief them on what they need to know. I'm not a vendor myself, so I'm not going to, try and sell you my expensive carbon accounting program. I just want to get you motivated and get you started and help you set up your own departments and programs to get this work done. I am Laura at enough.co, and I put as many resources as I can find on enough.co and on its social channels so that you can convince your management how important this is to do. So I'm happy to consult, advise, speak, whatever it is that you need. But I just want to get this simple idea across that there are ways we can engage market forces. We can't just let the market go on its own. It's not getting it done. But we need to be smart, even for like people deep in climate and for startups with great innovations. Please stop marketing to environmentalists. This has to be for everybody.
Yeah.
Because that's not going to get us there. It's too niche. We cannot be niche. This is happening to all of us.
And as I always say, no shaming, no blaming, and every little bit helps. Don't yell at people. Don't belittle anybody. And even if you can't do a huge change, like putting solar panels on your roof, do the little things.
You'd be amazed the number of things that are quick and easy to do. I'm very evangelical about this startup, Arcadia.com, because I wanted to get my house off, dirty fuels and onto clean electricity.
Yep.
And depending where you live, that could be easy, but it can also be incredibly difficult. Arcadia has figured out a way to make it like one step. You give them the login to your electric company, and then they take over your electricity buying, and they do offsets so that every watt I'm using here, the equivalent of it is being is wind or other renewables.
Love that.
Something you can do. It took me 3 minutes, right? So the things that are low hanging fruit and really quick and easy to do like that are super important. But also just remembering that we have so much technology that exists, that's proven, and that's commercially viable, that's being stopped by things like not enough financing, not the right kinds of financing available, insurers not quite sure how to insure that kind of a physical plant, people not aware they can buy it, let alone just simply getting rid of subsidies for the bad things, right? It is not a fair and open market right now. We are spending billions to prop up a dying industry in fossil fuels. And we need all of it. We need the activism, we need the policy, but the stories I'm focusing on right now are the ones that every human who earns, spends, saves, or invests, or all four, has control over. And it's a lot.
It's a lot, but you make it simple. And that's why the people need you. So Laura at enough.co, go find her. When I post this, I'll put in all of your handles and your website so people can easily click on you. But thank you. This has been a wealth of knowledge, and I love the fact that you left the environmental world for a little while, but you came back running. So I love that.
Combining my two worlds, right? Startup,
Yes.
tech, and business with that history and environment. I still have that paper right here in the glass case, and I've got to live up to what I could have done in '92, and going to do it now.
You are surpassing it. You're doing an amazing job. I love this. So thank you so much. And this has been extremely thought-provoking. So more people need to hire you, talk to you, bring you in. All of the clients and consultants out there, just talk, communicate, and you can learn how to fix your climate footprint.
I'm here to help. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.